Anticipated report on Don't Ask, Don't Tell from the Pentagon. With me in studio is the host of the Rachel Maddow Show, Rachel Maddow. We also have a couple of other guests lined up, but I've got to start off, of course, with you, Rachel. We'd heard leaks that it would be about 70% in the survey that said they would anticipate no change or mixed reviews as far as if Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And now we've got the hard facts in a report. What happens next?
What happens next is that all eyes are on the Republicans, really. A lot of the objections voiced by members of the Congress who are Republicans, who are not known for strongly anti-gay views, not known as being real crusaders on this as a social issue, have been hinging on this report. Now this report is unequivocal. The risk of repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell to overall military effectiveness is low. We heard Admiral Mullen just there saying it used to be my personal opinion that we ought to get rid of this. It is now my professional opinion that we ought to get rid of this. You heard Secretary Gates making an incredibly, I thought, nimble argument and a strong argument that the risk here to the armed services is them not doing this on their own terms, of being forced to do it on the terms imposed by a court, saying that it is of high risk if you don't take care of this legislatively. It is of low risk if we do this on our own terms, and then all those eyes turn to implementation plans. So
the concern is, of course, the federal courts getting involved and lawmakers not acting before the end of the year in this lame duck session of Congress. We can bring up, if in a sense the ball is in the court of some of the House Republicans already. Congressman Joe Wilson, the ranking member on the House Armed Services Subcommittee, says using the last days of a lame duck Congress is to hastily repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell would be highly irresponsible. Today's Pentagon report must be thoroughly examined by the committees of jurisdiction to determine the potential impacts on the military recruitment. So even having the report and having these military leaders say in definitive words what they believe is the proper way to move ahead, you still already have House Republicans saying we need more time. Even after 50 years of study on this, by the way, this report 10 months, but studies have been going on for 50 years.
The House has already made their decision on this. If this happens in the lame duck, it's already cleared the House, and so that's essentially just noise. But Secretary Gates today took that argument like a long, slow curveball right over the plate and said, you want to know what the risk is? You want to know what's irresponsible? To not act on this and take care of this on our own terms through a means that we have now studied and feel very comfortable with, one of the largest surveys ever in the military on any personnel issue. Let us do this in a responsible way. Otherwise, the courts are going to force us to, and that's the irresponsible thing to do. So I think that argument, at least in my opinion, fairly demolished. The question is really whether or not the Senate is going to get it together. I do think that senators like Scott Brown, both of the senators from Maine, other people do have quite a lot of cover from this report, as much cover as is possibly imaginable.
But on the other side, the opposition led by Senator John McCain, who just this morning again reiterated his stance. In fact, let me play what John McCain said just this morning regarding Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We're getting it right now, but it is quite a contrast to what we heard from the candidate who's running for president, John McCain, and the John McCain we're hearing from now. I think, do we have it? Nevertheless, Rachel, we know now that John McCain initially said if military leaders came to him and said, listen, the time has come, that he would, in a sense, go along with this. Here's what he said this morning.
This was a political promise made by an inexperienced president or candidate for presidency of the United States. To somehow allege that this policy has been damaging the military is simply false. So the fact is that this system is working.
My apologies, that was this Sunday, Rachel, but in 2006, he said, the day the leadership of the military comes to me and says, Senator, we ought to change the policy, then I think we ought to consider seriously changing it.
What's incredible, too, is that at that time in 2006, he specifically cited Colin Powell and said, I looked to Colin Powell and his opinion on this when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was implemented. I respected his view as a military leader that this is what we should do. Colin Powell, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at that time. Now, John McCain is saying that the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff doesn't qualify in his mind as a military leader. He said, in all due respect, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is not directly in charge of the troops. Essentially saying that Admiral Mullen's professional opinion on this as chairman of the Joint Chiefs doesn't count to John McCain because John McCain no longer agrees with him.
Secretary Gates referred to the president and the president's desires. What do you want to see from specifically the president next?
It's interesting that Secretary Gates specifically singled out the president and said, if we are seen to be slow rolling this, obviously military jargon for implementing it but not really, saying yes sir and then not really doing it. If we are seen to be slow rolling this, he's essentially saying, I expect the president to be all over us on this. That is an indication that the Pentagon is feeling like the president is directly engaged on this. There's been a lot of criticism from the left that the president's level of engagement on this has not been visible, has not been something that the left feels he's been as enthusiastic about as he says he is. Yeah. This is a sign that the president's been doing a lot.
All right. Thank you, Rachel, for joining us. And
Cameron,
of course,
thanks.
You can see more of what Rachel has to say about Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the events today. The Rachel Maddow Show, weeknights at 9 Eastern, only on MSNBC. Now let's bring in Elaine Donnelly, president